Hey everyone. So this presentation is a overview of Cloudhub VPC and the dedicated load balancer. This is as of January 2017. It could change from this point as always with our product and how quickly we innovate the usage and the UI and the experience. But sometimes it helps to have a graphical overview of how the infrastructure is set up in addition to kind of reading through documentation. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start first by looking at the Cloudhub itself and how it works today. Right? So we leverage the Amazon Web Services, and the Cloudhub itself provides a shared worker cloud for each organization or each user. And as part of that shared worker cloud is a load balancer that takes requests from the public internet. And when you deploy your application to Cloudhub, it'll start up an instance within the shared worker cloud and designate it an app name, right? We'll look at an example in a little bit called Hello World. And when you make a call from the public internet, you'll go to that specific name, the appname.cloudhub.io, and it'll go through the load balancer and route it accordingly to that specific app, that instance with that app name, right? It'll replace the port numbers. So if you come in at port 80, it'll route it to 8081. If you come in at port 4043, HTTPS, it'll go to 8082. And it'll communicate to a specific DNS name for that worker. So in this case, it would be mule-worker-appname.cloudhub.io. And then depending on which HTTP you're coming in at, it'll replace that port number as well. Okay. Internally, the apps can communicate with one another over a different DNS, mule-worker-internal-appname.cloudhub.io, and that port is 8091 and 8092. But when you're using the out of the box, the public, the generally available Cloudhub, you don't really have to worry about those ports in that specific DNS name. Additionally, you can also hit these Mule workers by going directly to that DNS, mule-worker-appname.cloudhub.io, and bypass the load balancer. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at an example application that I'm going to deploy to Cloudhub. You can see it's going to listen at port 8081 over HTTP protocol, and I'm just going to deploy this over to Cloudhub. Right, and it's up and running. It has its app URL. If we go ahead and browse to this and go to that specific path, right, you can see it's going to go ahead and grab that information from Salesforce and return that back using that appname.cloudhub.io. And in addition, if we go ahead and call the DNS name for that internal worker, mule-worker-helloworld.cloudhub.io, and use port 8081/contacts, you'll be able to also hit that specific application instance that's running within Cloudhub. Okay, so next let's look at the VPC, or the virtual private cloud within the MuleSoft Anypoint platform. The shared worker cloud in itself is a VPC. It's a virtual private cloud of shared workers. It's a multi-tenant environment. But when your organization or your account needs its own VPC, in essence, what you're doing is spinning up its own custom worker cloud, right? Each organization can have its own VPC environment where they can spin up their own application, their own Mule runtimes within that worker cloud, right? That's separated from the shared worker cloud, the multi-tenant environment. And when you create this VPC, right, you can go ahead and spin up your instances within this VPC. The same network path applies for those instances, right? If you go to that appname.cloudhub.io, you can go to the load balancer and it'll change the ports, and you can hit that specific DNS name, mule-worker-appname.cloudhub.io.port. And additionally, you can also hit that directly from the public internet as well. What the VPC provides you is the ability to control access to those instances running in your VPC. There's the firewall capabilities. You can also designate a VPC to a specific organization and then also to a specific environment. And I'll run through that shortly. And with that firewall turned on, you can shut off the ports and prevent the public internet from accessing those instances within your virtual private cloud. And the VPC is different from VPN, right? Once you create a VPC, you still need to go through the process with our cloud services team to set up the VPN connection, be it IPsec, AWS peering, or direct AWS Direct Connect, right? But in essence, what the VPC provides you is a way to create that isolated worker cloud for your runtimes and allow you to control, the firewall or the port access to those runtimes. And then also additionally provide your own DNS and your own vanity domain to those instances instead of having to leverage cloudhub.io. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at setting up a VPC within Cloudhub. It's actually a pretty simple process, and it just requires you knowing your IP address range that you want for your internal network if you're setting up a VPN. If not, it's just a matter of understanding which ports you want to open and close, and then which business groups and environments you want it tied to. Okay, so it's as simple as coming to Runtime Manager, clicking on VPC over here on the left, and clicking on Create VPC. You can go ahead and give it a name, and you can select the region that you want this VPC deployed to. You'll give it a CIDR block. Again, this designates what you want your instances in that VPC to be assigned to, what IPs to assign to them. So when you create that VPN, the subnet within your network or your corporate network can communicate with those instances running within this VPC. So we can go ahead and set this up. And one thing to keep in mind within the documentation is just make sure that you set up enough instances within this, the CIDR block. Okay. Additionally, we can go ahead and choose the environments that we want to deploy this VPC to, right? So we can choose, designate it for the internal network or internal environment or production or sandbox. And then you can also assign it to a specific business group that can leverage this VPC. Down below, you can see the firewall rules. This is where you can either add new rules or delete existing rules. Out of the box, the standard ports are available for use, right? So again, if you look back at the Cloudhub setup, right, port 8081 and 8082 are tied to the standard port 80 and 43. And then port 8091 and 8092 are private ports that are specific to this VPC environment. And I'll show you that setup shortly once we jump back to the standard or previously set up VPC. And then the last section in here is the internal DNS. This is where you can set up a DNS server to assign names to the new IP address, the new instances that you spin up. And then also the ability to add a new domain, right? This is where you can set up your vanity domains. Instead of having to go to cloudhub.io, you can go to your specific domain name, and it'll be mapped accordingly to your instances, right? So once you set that up, it'll go ahead and spin up that VPC environment. And then from there, you can go ahead and deploy applications to this virtual private cloud, right? So we go ahead and click on this, click on Manage VPC. All the things that you saw within the setup are there available, right? You can go ahead and select additional environments. Underneath business groups, you can go ahead and select the business group that you want to tie this to. The firewall rules, you can go ahead and change or modify the existing rules. So at some point, once you set up that VPN connection, you can come in here and turn off access to port 80 and 443. And then lastly, the internal DNS, or you can configure the domain name as well as the DNS server. Okay. One thing to keep in mind is that you can't delete a VPC until you delete the applications that are running within that VPC within the environment. Okay, so the last thing we want to look at is the dedicated load balancer. And this is a separate component that needs to be configured in addition to the VPC. When you make a request for your account, when you get your account set up, make sure that you get entitlement for both the VPC and also for a dedicated load balancer in order to kind of set this up. So the dedicated load balancer is a separate entitlement that spins up a separate system, and you assign that dedicated load balancer a name. And what the dedicated load balancer allows you to do is provide your own certificates, right? If you want the two-way SSL, but also provide a proxy, right? A proxy mapping where when a request comes in, you can route it to a specific instance within your virtual private cloud, right? And that's something you can't do with the standard Cloudhub load balancer. So that dedicated load balancer provides its own DNS name, the load balancer name.lb.anypointdns.net. And when you make a request from the public internet to that name, it goes through that initial port mapping, right? 80 to 8081 and 443 to 8882. There can also be port 80 to 8091 and port 443 to 8092. In addition comes the mapping, right? So the base path, right? If you apply an app name to the end of that request, it applies the mappings that you set up within the command line interface, right? So if you go to load bound, the lb name.lb.anypoint.dns.net/app name, that will go ahead and map it to the app name.cloudhub.io and then communicate directly with that instance within your virtual private cloud. Okay. In addition, that app, while you still have that ability to route that request through that dedicated load balancer, you can bypass all that again by going to the externally exposed name of mule-worker-appname.cloudhub.io, unless you've, of course, locked down the ports using the firewall rules that you define within your VPC. Okay, so regarding the dedicated load balancer, if you have the dedicated load balancer entitlement within your account, you can go ahead and create a dedicated load balancer. As of today, there currently isn't a way within Cloudhub to set up the load balancer. You need to use the command line interface to do so. There's instructions in our documentation on how to set that up. Once you come to the command line interface, this is where you can go ahead and there's certain commands that you can run with a command line interface to get a description of your current load balancer, right? So this will describe the current load balancer, the IP address, the SSL endpoints, and this is also where you go ahead and set up the mappings, right? So if you look at the mappings that I currently have set up for this load balancer that's tied to my VPC, when a request comes into the app, the endpoint for a specific app, or the endpoint, it's going to route it to a specific app that I have running in my instance, and then communicate over that specific protocol, right? So if I come over to my applications over here within my Cloudhub instance, you can see that I have the Alexa skill, and if I try to access this today, directly through the mule-worker Alexa skill.cloudhub.io, there's no way to hit it because it's been assigned port 8091 for those endpoints, and it isn't exposed. But what you can do is go to the load balancer, right? So just like the mapping says, if I go to alexa.lb.anypointdns.net, right? It's going to go ahead and route me directly to that specific instance here, right, that I have running in Cloudhub, and communicate through a secure connection, and then this one, provides, that specific integration flow within that Cloudhub instance. Okay, so hopefully this presentation provided you a pretty good basic overview of the Cloudhub VPC as well as dedicated load balancer. Please leverage the MuleSoft documentation to gain a further understanding of some of the capabilities. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.